that join us from Israel, good morning. Those that join us across the pond, I'm really happy to have Yifat Philip joining us today and agreed to share with us her healthcare compliance experience. Yifat, welcome.
Thank you, Gilad. Happy to be here. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Yifat. Yifat joined us after a lot of years with healthcare legal experience, with over 3.5 or almost 3.5 years as the VP and General Counsel of Kamada, one of the bigger publicly listed companies, life science companies in Israel. And before that, over 7 years with Opco Biologics. So tons of experience of almost, over 10 years of operating companies experience. And before that, a lot of years as an attorney with firms, different firms. You can check, and she'll introduce herself as well. Before we start, I just want to give one sentence on the importance of healthcare compliance. So as companies who operate in the US market, and many times not being broadly based or rooted in the US, it's easy to overlook healthcare compliance considerations when sales and marketing and other type of commercial activities are taking place. Still hear myself every once in a while, so I don't know where that's coming from. And the importance here of healthcare compliance can come when you sell already, but it could also be when before you sell, you make all kind of arrangements. And then when you get to the point when a strategic want to invest or a large fund want to invest, and they're conducting healthcare compliance due diligence, which is now mandatory part of every due diligence, the companies find that they not perfectly set to meet whole healthcare compliance requirement. And then, of course, everybody's starting to backpedaling and it's complicated. So as MCI, as we look forward, since healthcare compliance is a commercial activities, we've wanted to raise the issue and to create a platform for our network to listen to an expert like Yifat, and then, of course, having a dialogue. And Yifat, thank you for joining us. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Gilad. Okay, so hello, everyone. I'm Yifat Philip, and I'm the lawyer in the room. I'm here to talk about the dark side of marketing prescription product in the United States. Direct marketing in the United States is a huge opportunity, really. Working alone without a partner, meaning there's no one who's going to cut a coupon of your revenues, and there's no one that will interfere in your strategic decisions about marketing with external consideration. But the risk here that the liability is on you, and you have to know how to market correctly products in the US in order to mitigate the risk, in order to think about the future, because this is a totally different story from any other jurisdiction. It's a labyrinth of rules and regulation on a federal level and on a state level. And some of the rules are things that are not so obvious to us, especially those who come overseas and they are not used to the US healthcare space. I don't know if you've been to a conference with physicians and you see in a coffee machine a sign: the coffee is allowed to physicians from the following states, 1, 2, 3, 4. Amazing. We're talking about a cup of coffee. The regulation is very, very detailed, very, very strict, and we have to know how to manage the way and what is the good strategy to deal with this burden or to deal with this challenge. So before we start, a bit about myself. Thank you. So I'm a biomed and tech legal consultant. I work freelance mainly with startups, and I'm compliance expert. in the past 3 years, I was VP General Counsel of Kamada, traded both on NASDAQ and Tel Aviv. In Kamada, I was in charge of setting up the infrastructure for healthcare compliance in the US when sales in the US has started directly. Kamada has $130 million of annual sales, and from this, around or a bit over 50 million from direct sales in the US. Before that, I was VP General Counsel of Opco Bio. Again, Opco traded on NASDAQ and Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Opco used to be called Prolor Biotech, and it was acquired at a valuation of $500 million. Opco has commercialized its lead product of long-acting HGH to Pfizer in a huge deal of billions of dollars. Prior to this, I grew up in a leading Tel Aviv law firms, high tech and biotech, Perel Cohen and Fisher FDC. And in addition, and also gained the perspective of the regulator. I was part of the special unit in the state attorney that worked with the Israeli Securities Authority. So this is me. And now a bit about the regulator. So you can start talking about healthcare compliance before you really understand who is the regulator and what kind of enforcement we're going to experience. So these are 3 different departments of federal department that relate to healthcare compliance. Go from left to right. The first is the Department of Commerce. And under the Department of Commerce, there's the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. Those are mainly concerned with misleading advertising, False Claims Act, misleading advertising. In addition, are concerned with fair trade and with antitrust. So the Department of Commerce is mainly about trade. Then the Department of Health and Human Services, that most of us know, the FDA. I mean, the FDA is the king as it goes to approvals and regulation, but the FDA has arms that are related as well to healthcare enforcement. So in everything that is related to Medicare and Medicaid, and to transparency with respect to Medicare and Medicaid, fraud in this respect is the CMS. Then there's Office for Criminal Offenses, and Office for Inspector General. Office of Inspector General. These ones are conducting audits, evaluation, and investigations. So I should tell that there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of investigators that are in the field. They are going and checking in with specific conferences. They could go on the sky, FDA investigator, and talk with your sales team on a booth or with your medical team and try to get answers to questions that they ask on the sky and make sure that they get the right answers and the promotion is being done correctly. There are also ongoing audits and evaluations, and the OIG as well is responsible for the regulations and give guidelines to the industry. Then a third department, federal department, that is unrelated to the healthcare. It's a general department for all kinds of industries. It's the Attorney General. Whenever there is a serious investigation, big dollar amount investigation, the allegation itself will be conducted through the Department of Justice. And they will be the one that will investigate, and they will be the one who will bring it to court in some cases, or bring it to settlement. Any question on this? No. So we continue. So I have to talk about numbers, about amounts, even a bit, just for you to know what's on stake. So I had to be Nostradamus and bring you apocalyptic news, but these are the amounts of all kinds of companies. You can see here small companies or big companies or medium-sized companies. And when we talk about medical device settlements of the Department of Justice, so the amounts that we see here just in the recent years can reach up to $160 million. I should say that is very often and very common for a company in its lifetime of selling directly in the United States prescription product to get some kind of allegation, some kind of audit. Something is going to be found wrong. The emphasis in the United States, especially since the opioid crisis, is on specific emphasis on healthcare compliance. And most of the company that we know, they had some incidents with the FDA or with the DOJ and closed it in some kind of a settlement. It's like a taxi driver that is riding on his car for many years. So the chances for getting a ticket or a fine is high chances. So this is part of the risk of conducting the business. Now you can see the numbers that we are dealing with when I'm talking about pharma. These are higher numbers, up to $300 million. I have to say, with respect to the fines, that some of the allegations, the source of the allegations is whistleblowing, especially in connection with the False Claim Act of promotion. There are whistleblowers within the companies, mostly employees or physicians that have encountered some kind of wrongdoing and report to the government. And there is strong incentive for whistleblower to go to the government and report on any wrongdoing that he encounters. The False Claims Act includes quit tam provisions that give the whistleblower 15 to 30% of the fine actually paid by the company, but the specific allegation that the whistleblower raised. So it's a significant amount. I could say that in Canada, one of our consultants really shared with us that his nephew was a part of a company, a small startup that started its sales in the US, and he had some reservations about the conduct and about the policy and the behavior. And since he had prior experience with big pharma company, he approached his manager and reported and tried to ask to change the way of behavior. When this was not accepted, he went to the government. 3 years later, he gained $3 million. So it's a huge incentive to go to the government, to an employee, and we should know that this is part of the ecosystem. This is part of the space. This is how things are being done in the industry. Just one more slide about the numbers. As I said, the DOJ, Department of Justice, is with respect to all industries. So just look at the settlements. In 2021, out of the 5.6 billion in settlements, over 5 billion relates to the healthcare industry, as if there are no other industries. I believe mostly in pharma, but as well in medical device. And out of this 5 billion, 1.6 billion resulted from whistleblowing, from the quit tam provisions. Okay, so this was a long intro for us to try to understand what is the essence or what are the most important elements of healthcare compliance in the US. It's indeed an opportunity, a huge opportunity of big dollar amounts revenues, but it contains a certain price, a certain premium you should pay in order to make sure you are doing things correctly. So the first element is indeed in respect of promotion. The first rule on in the US in promotion, that product claims should be fully consistent with the label and substantiated. So it means that you cannot promote anything that is pre-approved. No R&D promotion, no clinical product promotion, and you cannot promote any off-label use of your product. So it is clear that physicians are allowed to have to subscribe the product for off-label use, but life science companies cannot in any manner promote it. If the sales personnel get any questions in connection with off-label use, they cannot respond to it. They cannot talk about it, not in any manner. The only ones that can talk about off-label use in the company are the medical personnel. And the medical personnel indeed are not, and indeed should be very delicate in the treatment of off-label. It's only a response to unsolicited request or a scientific discussion without any misleading. This is something that is very delicate and taken care of. Secondly, there is a thorough review of any piece of promotion that deals with any promotional piece should be reviewed thoroughly, that it is fully consistent with the label and with the PI, and that it is backed with evidence, with clinical data. Often in companies, there is a MLR committee, medical, legal, regulatory review that goes page by page, word by word of every promotional piece, including roll-up for the booth or presentations of the salespeople or reprints of articles. Everything should be really looked over and you have to make sure that it's consistent. The second element of healthcare compliance is anti-kickback. Yes.
Can I just add two quick comments? So yes. Absolutely agree with everything you said. And two things that are maybe less known is that the slides are jumping, that your user manual is an extension of your label. And sometimes the instructions for use are also considered labels. So when you promote, it's not only the primary 510K indication or PMA label, but it's the entire FDA cleared instruction for use. So it's the broader sense, and we have to be very careful on that. That's the first thing. And second, you mentioned here, and rightfully you said direct sales, but even if you do indirect sales and you use distributors, as a manufacturer, you're held accountable to demonstrate that you provided the training and some monitoring for your distributor as well. You're not completely off the hook if you use a distributor in the US. So people should be considerate of that too.
Correct. I truly agree with you. But I should tell that as a small startup, using a big company, a big player that is well acquainted with healthcare compliance in the US, you of course have liability as a manufacturer, but the overall burden is lower because they are responsible, they are making all the groundwork in connection with this, they work with their sales personnel. So it is dependent on the level of cooperation, but it's indeed easier when you have a partner to share the liability or to share this burden of direct sales in the US. indeed, when you take this upon yourself and you are training the personnel, the sales personnel, you are recruiting the personnel, you are training the personnel, you are responsible for the sales personnel, then whole liability is yours. But I agree as well with your other comment, of course. Just talking a bit about kickback, the FDA have seen the relationship of commercial companies and healthcare professionals as very prone to abuse. Healthcare professionals should be independent in the prescribing the product, and any financial relationship that gets in the way could be perceived as repayment for prescribing the product in the past, or inducement or incentive for prescribing the product in the future. So in fact, it is something that you should really support with policies and rules of how to justify engagement with HCPs. And I'm talking about research collaborations, grants for education, consulting agreements. Everything should be backed with an assessment of fair market value. You cannot pay significant amounts because this will be considered as a kickback. Everything should be substantiated by an assessment of the real need for doing this specific engagement. In some cases, there's a need for committees that will assess the options and decide on any engagement with the healthcare professional or the healthcare institute, backed with protocol and making sure that everything is in the right order. Every hospitality or flight should be, as a rule, very modest. The government, actually most of the allegations and the investigation of the FDA and the DOJ are in connection with kickback, with the payment. So the rule is that you have to have a clear procedure in order to engage HCP or pay for HCP. The third element is actually connected with the second one. It is transparency. There's, yes.
One quick comment, an example for the anti-kickback that I see a lot, so I'd like to share. For example, a lot of startups in Israel like to have physicians on their advisory board. Key opinion leaders, people that are very important to the industry, to give them feedback. And many times they give them what we call a retainer, means fixed payment every month for their participation in advisory board. And that's in most cases that considered risky. It's considered risky because it's very difficult to explain and demonstrate that there was a fair market value exchange every single month for exactly the same amount. So it's much safer to do per hour agreement with them, let them report the hours that they worked for the company, or the company document the hours, and then explain much easier way to explain why they transferred X amount of dollars each month based on the actual hours and an actual rate that is market value. So I see tons of those retainers, and those are tons of HCC risk-taking. So that's a clear example of how Israeli companies are not careful with HCC and should be way more careful.
Well, everything is much easier to explain by an hourly fee. As well in research collaborations, all the lump sums that are paid for research collaboration, it is really difficult to find fair market value assessment for this. So once you separate it and define it as an hourly fee, it is much easier, and there are benchmarks for hourly fee and for any type of physicians and type of activity and on the state and so on. So yes, you have to work in this to make sure that you're really doing something that is the standard, is not leverage, is not overpaid, and you have to be focused on this and be able to justify. And I should say that this is well connected to the transparency. There is a rule in the United States that you have, since 2014, you have to report on every payment to an HCP that is above $10. Every year in April, you report on the preceding year, and you are really reporting, including significant amount of details on every part of your activity that contains payment to physicians or to healthcare institutes. You have 3 months grace when you start commercialization in the US, but this is it. After this, it's a really significant effort. You have to synchronize your system, your ERP system, your CRM system, your personnel should be trained to chase all the required details on the spot and not have to look for it afterwards when preparing the report. And this is something that really shows everyone what is the amount that you've been paying. And there was a judge, that Brandis, that used to say that the sunlight is the best disinfector, and indeed, it helps to keep the prices and the fees down. You can see how much your competitors pay, and you can see everything is public, and indeed, the payments are very modest in the industry. A second element of transparency is price transparency. You have to file reports in connection with any changes in prices that you make to your product. The reports are, again, are very detailed. You often take consultant to assist with this. There are federal reports and state reports, each with very different details, and it allows the patients, the consumers, to understand and to get information about price fluctuation.
And this is caveat, this is less applicable for medical devices.
Okay.
It's very applicable for pharma and drugs. It's less applicable for medtech because obviously that's a whole other regulatory environment for pricing.
Oh, okay. And then the fourth element, beware from whistleblowers. Make sure if there is a complaint within your company or from one of the physicians that you check that you go to the bottom of it. You really understand what is the source of it, what is the reason, and make sure that this will not haunt you somewhere in the future. And indeed, there should be some procedures in the policies in connection with this. And the last element is really the understanding of the day after. If you're going to commercialize in the US, your organization will change. There will be added bureaucracy. There will be added personnel that will be responsible for the procedure and for the implementation of policies. There will be additional training, and it will also influence your HR. There should be clear separation between medical and sales. They should be reporting to different functions in the organization. So a lot of things are changing after you start commercializing your products in the US. Any questions on this? No.
Perfect.
Finish?
Go ahead.
Okay. So how can we mitigate those risks? So the first mitigation is with the leadership. With compliance, the tone comes from the top. When the management is aware of compliance and putting this, the management and the board, putting this in high priority, it goes down to every employee in the company. if you want to make sure that there will not be FDA people knocking on your door and you will not be prepared to it and you will not have the right answer, this should be a culture in your organization. The leadership should include as well compliance officer that is not kind of someone external to the company that sends a compliance policy that is some kind of boilerplate and is not related and connected to the company. A compliance officer should really have a compliance policy that is a living document and being updated all the time in accordance with the strategy of the company and the challenges of the company. It has to know the business well in order to make sure that the policy is implemented and it is part of the business. His role is to be enabler, to allow the business team to get to the same place, but sometimes in a different manner that is more taking in consideration the future or the risks in connection with the marketing. Mitigation, a second mitigation in budget planning, as I said, compliance is a risky and a costly business, and you should be aware that there could be significant amount of consultation along the way with law firms, a significant internal effort in order to implement the policies. The questions that arise from the sales team are healthy questions, important questions, and there are a lot of gray areas to deal with. So this, of course, includes planning. Policies and SOPs, as I said, this is something that evolves over time and is something that is very, very important in the company. It's the framework. This is how you deal with compliance. And you have to train the people and the personnel on the policies of and SOPs, especially when it's an Israeli team working in the US, responsible for marketing, for product management. The Israeli team is not used to the US space and the way marketing is being conducted in the US. So training, and some more training. It takes time until grasping the way that this is being done and the actual risks. And of course, there's need to audit once upon in a very strict manner to audit and make sure that all the policies and SOPs are being adhered to. Last element to mitigate the risk is the documentation. It's not enough to adhere to the policy. It's not enough to conduct right procedures. Everything should be documented. When the FDA or the DOJ investigator come, they knock on your door and they often take the computers. They look on the documents and the correspondence, and this should be part of the culture of compliance, and you should be backed with all the documents of the right protocols of the committees and the right decision making and the right assessment. So this is before we end, just a short hypothetical to make sure that you have not fallen asleep. We have a parent. Yeah?
Can you go back? I just one quick comment.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. So I would say that the one of the best practices to demonstrate, for example, that you enforce is the easiest place to go, as you said, Yifat, is in those entertainment areas, right? The dinners, the convention, the hotels, stuff like this. And it's very good to look after a convention or periodically at the expense of the sales reps and find the few exceptions. There is always few exceptions just because it takes time, and make a case of it. So cap the expense, ask the reps for reimbursement or something along those lines, and issue a warning letter and make it known. So when eventually, if and God forbid an audit comes, you've actually taken steps to enforce your policies. And that documentation is very important. It helped me survive an audit more than once.
I agree. I agree. It's you have to really get to the heart of the people to make them understand that this is something important. This is something crucial and critical for the company. I mean, you cannot really sell your product and promote your product and help your patients if you are not obeying to these new rules of the game, because the consequences are dramatical. It's the fines that sometimes can be devastating to a company, and after the fines, there are often shareholder claims that come lawsuits from the shareholder for the management in connection with the fines and allegation of the government, and you cannot focus on doing business and about helping your patients anymore. So working with the people and making them understand how important is making them change their behavior and work correctly.
Right.
And I should say that most of the US sales team, they know compliance. They worked in other companies and they know that it is important, but you have to go to the special details of your case, your campaign, your portfolio, and special scenarios related to their work in the field in order for them to have the right answers and the right way to behave in connection with the market.
We have a quick question on the chat from Yoav. Yoav asked, anti-kickback for HCPs, engagement. Where can one find fair market value for a medical advisor? For example, hourly. He also said retainer, although we said it's not great to do. So let's focus on the hourly. What can you find it?
Well, you can buy benchmarks from law firms. They really sell you like a chart of what is the specialty of the HCP, where is it located, what is the assignment, and they give you an hourly fee. In addition, it is also possible to look on the reporting, the sunshine reporting of your competitors. So then you don't get the full picture because you don't have a legal opinion, but you can see what is the benchmark in the industry. These are the two methods.
Thank you. That's very useful. Thank you, Yifat.
Okay, good. So we'll go to the hypothetical. Just a minute. Oh, I'm stuck again. Okay. So I will tell the facts. Just want to hear from you 2 or 3 points that are areas of risk after all that we spoke here. Parent based in Israel, leadership in Israel. Markets product globally on oncology space. Only recently launched direct US sales and recruited personnel. Head of quality and regulatory is responsible for compliance. No specific US compliance policy. Large number of high-value HCP consultants. Lots of publication on off-label use and active MSL team. Company provides significant, just a minute, funding for research grants. So what is risky here? Anyone?
They're all shy. Go ahead.
At least one of the facts here is area of risk that we should be concerned of. Someone that should be less shy than the others?
Okay, I'll volunteer. I think the fact that you have no specific US compliance policies is very problematic for any company at any size.
Yeah. US compliance is very different from other jurisdictions, even if it's marketed globally. you have to be very specific to comply with the US regulation. This is first and very important area of risk. Additional? None. Okay. The fact that the parent is based in Israel and the leadership in Israel, it's not so easy for leaders in Israel to work with US sales team and US healthcare. The fact that the head of quality and regulatory is also responsible for US compliance, this is something that you should really focus on US compliance only. And off-label publication, significant funding, all of this could be allowed, could be okay, but it's very, very delicate.
Any questions? More questions for Yifat? We have a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure if there is any questions, we can address them.
I would like to ask a question, please.
Yes.
Sure.
I'm working in the area where there is a lack of technology, and there is a lot of unlabeled use for different devices, and I wonder how it works that the big companies, including Johnson & Johnson, that they are selling those devices in the clear understanding that their use is off-label, and still also there are publications which can be found easily of the off-label use, and this becoming like a practice in the industry, and it's totally fine. But isn't it subject to regulation?
Yifat, I'll take a quick first stab.
Yes.
It took me years to understand, so that's why I'm jumping here. You have to understand, labeling regulation is imposed, or it's holding accountable companies for to whom and how they market the product. It does not apply to HCPs. So doctors are allowed, it's completely legal to a doctor to use the product off-label. Now, of course, there is other risk associated with this, but not FDA regulatory risk. But the companies cannot promote, suggest, or educate the off-label use. So it often happens that doctors among themselves in conventions and in Twitter and many other things, sharing off-label use of products, and the FDA cannot do anything about it because it's how they practice medicine, and they're allowed to practice off-label. You as a company, though, should not be related to that in any way, shape, or form. Promotion, education, or sharing. Yifat?
But there's an exception. If there's an unsolicited request for information from an HCP. HCP approached the company and wants to get more information about off-label use, the company can answer. And the answer should be done by a medical personnel and not sales personnel, and it should be done on individual basis. I mean, not in a room full of crowd that other physician could be incentivized or induced for off-label use. If there's a question, they should take it, okay, I will answer it offline, and I will give you the required information, and there could be exchange of scientific information about off-label use. So this is very, very delicate, and a lot of unsolicited inquiries as at the end discovered to be solicited requirements. So everything is very delicate in connection with it, but indeed there is a prevalent off-label use, and significant amount of revenues are derived from off-label use. And the most critical issue in connection with this, if we put promotion aside, is the insurance. The insurance does not cover you, your product insurance does not cover you for off-label use.
Yeah. So what you see a lot of times is companies ask FDA clearance or approval for very narrow indication because it's easier to get. And then what happened in reality is that there is a broad off-label use to this product based on other indications, but as long as the company play by the book, that's legit. Yifat, I want to thank you so much for your sharing all this wisdom with us. This was really insightful, and I think this is really important. And I think this is an area of that greatly overlooked by companies, which is very risky. So one word of summary, and then we have to let go, of course, because of time. Yifat?
Okay, so just a key takeaway from our discussion here. Your lawyer is your business partner. Work with him, and help you find a solution. Compliance is a marathon. This is something that it cannot be changed in the organization in one day, and it takes time. And policies are not meant to stay hung on the wall, but implemented in the organization. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, even offline. Happy to connect with you. I think it's very, very important for you to take it into consideration when commercializing in the US. And there are solutions for every problem, for every issue, and the lawyers and the compliance expert as well want to work with the organization and with the business to find solution.
Yifat, thank you so much. Hannah, thank you for organizing everything. Participant, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.